Hello, everyone. I'm Erik de Souza, and joining me today with a conversation with Crime Writers of Canada is Gayleen Froese. Gayleen is an LGBTQ writer of detective fiction living in Edmonton, Canada. Her novels include The Girl Whose Luck Ran Out and the upcoming sequel, The Man Who Lost His Pen, from DSP or Dream Spinner Publications, and TOUCH and GRAYLING CROSS from New West Press. I could actually talk to her all day and I have so many questions, but I had to do some editing. So we're going to focus, Gayleen, today on some of your characters. I hope that's okay with you, and maybe we'll have future conversations.
It sounds good. I love gossiping about my characters. So.
Good, great. Just as a teaser, I was on your website. That bio is from your website, but you have one of the greatest quotes or kudos from anybody I can imagine for detective fiction. Laird Ryan states, if Dorothy Parker and Dashiell Hammett decided to write together, it would be a lot like this. Fantastic.
I love that too.
And yes, definitely there is a feel with your story. I'm currently reading the first book, The Girl Whose Luck Ran Out. There is a definite feel to classic detective novels, with one glaring difference. Typically, the lead detective is sort of a man's man. Yeah, I'm thinking Sam Spade, Mike Hammer, tough guys with few words. Does having a gay male as a detective change the archetype of a noir protagonist?
You know, I would say maybe not as much as people would think. I think that some of the classic detectives, Mike Hammer, for example, are the lots of fists and no talking kind of guys. But when you really look at Ross MacDonald's Lou Archer, for example, or definitely Robert B. Parker's Spencer character, or in combination Archie Goodwin and Nero Wolfe are kind of the two sides of one entity. I think there's a lot of philosophy that comes into those books. I think a lot of them are about what is it to be a good person or a bad person? How do you pay your debts to society while still having an independent life? Like, they ask big questions. I think that's what those books are there for.
Yeah, and you ask the same big questions, and the one thing I get out of Ben is he seems to have a lot of empathy, and I hope I'm reading that right, because he's a very empathetic character, and I think he wants to do right by pretty much everyone. Yeah, he does. But at the same time, like you say, make a living being a detective. I want to say though, is his empathy, do you feel it gets in his way?
Well, it definitely did when he was a cop and he wasn't able to make as many of his own choices about what he was going to do. And what he thought was worth spending his time on and what he thought wasn't. But it does probably too, in as much as everything becomes more complicated when you're trying to do right by everyone in a situation. And I think he still feels like that's the right thing to do. But it means that he's balancing a lot all the time.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that he's balancing with is, I don't want to say too much about your story, but you have an ex-flame of his come back into his life. Actually, at a critical point in his life. Jesse, who's a very unique character, is quite sick, needs his help, and he is there for his friend to an amazing degree, especially how to treat your ex. Could you tell us a little bit about Jesse without saying too much?
Jess is a rock musician, and he's one of these people who decided, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to, I'm getting famous or I'm going to die trying. And not just famous, but I want to be able to make my own music the way I want to make it. I want it to sound, the way I need it to sound. I want to say the things I want to say. So like Ben in that sense, where he wants to sort of have his own path. And he really devoted himself to it, but it's been hard on him because it is, I think, a really hard lifestyle. And when you talk to people who are working musicians, they'll tell you that it can be really tough, especially once you've been in it for a few years and you're not sure if you want to maybe try something else, or, if you're getting tired of it or just getting tired in general. So, Jess is kind of going through that right now, and also questioning the fact that he definitely gave up on his relationship with Ben a lot earlier, and a lot of other things in life that he could have pursued and didn't, because he had this all-consuming idea that he was going to become a rock star. And if you throw yourself into something wholeheartedly and then it's not enough to be your whole life, then you have a lot of things to look back on and questions to ask yourself.
Yeah, it seems like you have two characters who are hitting their midlife crisis at 30. I don't know.
Yeah, they're getting the job done early. I think they're really they're very proactive in getting in there early. Yeah.
Yeah, and we were chatting too. You were saying that even 30, which is considered by most people is still quite young, it's sort of a weird age for both of these characters where they're sort of discovering it, I think, themselves, but also they're starting to feel old. Like,
Yeah. Well, especially because, Jess is involved in pop culture. And then in this case, they're looking for a university student. And so, Jess is continually confronted with the fact that, wait a minute, I used to be, what was hip. I used to be the coolest of the cool and the cutting edge. And now it's harder and harder to find that spot because I'm not naturally in it anymore. And meanwhile, Ben is trying to figure out, for example, he's the sister who hired him to find the missing student, puts a bunch of information on Facebook, and Ben's like, I don't know, man. I don't think that's the place. Should this be on TikTok? I don't. And that realization, which I think, honestly, from friends I've talked to and just thinking back on my own life, it does seem to hit you a lot in your early 30s where you start to go, oh, wait a minute, my conception of myself as a kid doesn't fit anymore.
Yes. Yeah, but still, like, older people look down at you like you're a kid.
Yeah, you're right in the middle. Yeah, I'm not respected by anyone.
Yeah, exactly, because he's relatively becoming a private detective, so he hasn't really earned his I don't know what you want to call it, his street cred yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, real private detectives, a lot of the work they do is not glamorous or exciting. It is, it's divorce cases and insurance cases and WCB cases, that kind of thing. That's what they do. Funny story. I did a lot of research about private detectives in Alberta because that's where Ben works. And I wanted to know, what could they do? What could they not do? What did it take to become licensed? All that sort of thing. I did so much of that research that Google started sending me ads for divorce lawyers. And you know what? The algorithm is probably usually not wrong. Like, I bet that in most cases, especially when a woman about my age starts researching how private detectives work in Alberta, that's the next step.
Yeah,
I laugh pretty hard.
It's good because there's only two choices, laugh or cry, I guess. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Those are your options.
You threw me at the beginning, and I sort of have to ask. You have author's notes right at the beginning about Ben Ames, making it sound like he's a real person, and you're sort of his literary agent writing his story because somebody had to write it. You fooled me to the point where I had to Google the name, and it's such a common name that I even did like a deep research, like detectives in Alberta, just to be sure that this person wasn't real. Was there a reason why you want to play that trick on us?
Yeah, when I was very young, I used to read these books that are not very well known anymore, but they're great. And they're called The Three Investigators. And it was these three kids who solved mysteries together. And the premise of these books was that they had somehow done some kind of a favor for Alfred Hitchcock or something. I don't know I can't remember how they got into it, but that Alfred Hitchcock then wrote, quote unquote, the introductions to all of their books. And I loved that, reading those. And they were always very droll, in that Hitchcock style, that kind of an Alfred Hitchcock presents kind of an introduction. They were very funny. Like, even as a little kid, I thought they were great. And I loved that. I always remembered it. And then I also, because I grew up in a weird relationship with books because my dad would finish reading books and just throw them into my room. I was a very early reader, and I was a reader who was reading high above my grade level. And I don't think it ever crossed my dad's mind that didn't necessarily make all books that I could read appropriate for me to read. So some very weird things landed in my room. But I read Michael Crichton as a really pretty young kid, and there would always be footnotes in there. And it was always exciting for me to go, okay, so is this real, or did this happen, or did this not happen? And who these people he's quoting or thanking or whatever, are they real? Like, NASA's real, I know that one, and looking stuff up. And I just thought that was a lot of fun. So I thought, now that I've got my own books, I'll do it for mine.
Fair enough. Speaking of manly characters, Dr. Luna Fairs. She sometimes seems to have the biggest balls in the room,
she does.
especially at the beginning. And you wrote one of the best lines I can remember in many years, and it happens early, so I don't think I'm giving too much away. So please allow me to read it because I just love it. She stormed off that elevator with an urgency and entitlement seen only in doctors and toddlers. I love it. And just thinking of your creativity, like, where did you think of and toddlers?
You know what? I think there's a kind of, doctors have to be imbued with a lot of self-confidence to do their jobs. Like, imagine, because I make mistakes, everybody makes mistakes. And if I had to go to my day job every day knowing my mistakes could be huge and have a huge impact on someone's life, the amount of self-confidence I'd have to, you know, to get up in the morning and go to work would be staggering. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've screwed up at work and went, thank God that wasn't a hugely impactful thing I just did. Like, you know, so I think that doctors have to get into this headspace sometimes where it's like, I deserve to be here. I can do what I need to do, you know, and they don't question themselves. They just have to put their self-doubt in a corner and just charge in there. And, you know, little kids are the same way.
Yeah, they're definitely the same way.
Get back into that space of like, you know, it's okay. And I'm not asking any questions.
Yeah. After reading that, I remembered sort of my children, like one day learning to walk and the next day climbing stairs without the rail. And it's just, there's a confidence that they have. They don't know that there's danger everywhere. So yeah, again, my kudos to that line. It's so brilliant. The other character that I very much enjoy, and mostly maybe more of the relationship he has with Ben, is his old partner, Detective Kent Hauser. They seem to kid a lot, but there's like almost like Kent hasn't gone to sensitivity training at all.
No, he does not. He has no idea. But I mean, you know what? He doesn't have no idea. Like, he bonds with Jess a little bit, and it's played down a lot in the book, and it's kind of low key, but it's a thing where I know it about the characters. Kent's sister suffers from depression, and so does Jesse. And so he and Jesse bond over that. And there are ways in which Kent understands that about Jesse better than Ben does. So Kent is a guy with layers. There's a lot going on there.
Oh, okay. So I'm just at the early levels of the onion.
Yeah. But at the same time, he is also a guy who, I mean, I think Ben calls him, you know, a beef-eating Alberta ex-football player. That's his deal, you know, played football in high school and likes a steak.
Yeah, like you mentioned early on that sort of Ben left the forces due to his extracurricular activity. And I don't know too much of the background, but I find it interesting that they're still close friends.
Yeah. His problem was never with Kent. No, that relationship was always really good. And yeah, they continue to be really close friends. I think that ultimately they just respected each other, and that was really all Ben wanted. And the other thing is that Kent too wants to do the right thing and wants to solve the mystery, and, you know, wants to treat people right. And again, that's the fundamental thing Ben asks. So whatever people may seem to be on the surface, if at their core they have that heart of decency, that's what Ben's looking for.
Excellent. Well, I'm enjoying this book and I'm reading it at a pretty fast pace. Your next book in this series is coming out in May, I believe. I'm hoping all 4 characters are back.
Yeah, they are. It happens backstage at a charity event that Jesse's performing at, and Ben is just there with him, and then Kent and Luna come in later as the special guests. And as often happens in crime fiction, you get to a point where nobody's really allowed to leave, so they're all there for the duration.
Also, a close crime thing. Oh, those are always fun. You know, speaking of mystery, The Man Who Lost His Pen has a lot of mystery in the title of like, what is going on there?
Yeah, so that one I've decided not to give that away to anybody, because when my editor read it, I actually got like this huge joyful note in the edits when she got to the point where she was like, that's what the pen is about. That's why he died, because of a pen. And she was so delighted, and I was like, I can't spoil that for anybody else. So.
Excellent. As I said at the beginning, I have so many questions. I'd love to talk to you about your setting, but let's do that for another day. And also your approach to COVID. Also, again, let's do it another day because you approached it quite well. For now, though, do you have any upcoming events, I guess, book launches or book readings?
Yeah, there's a Crime Writers of Canada event here in Edmonton, Noir at the Bar. So we're going to be at Audrey's. It's not actually a bar, but I guess for the night it will be. You know, we'll pack in the liquor, and no, we will not. We'll bring a bar sensibility. But yeah, we're going to be doing. There's 4 of us that are going to be doing readings there, and that's on April 4th, and that should be a blast. So I know the last time I was at Audrey's with some of the people from this crew, we had a really good time. So in fact, I hope that the staff at Audrey's are a little more open about us needing to leave this time, because by by the end of it, we were like, oh, is it that time? How long have these people been wanting to go home? But we really it was so much fun to talk to other authors too, as well as people who come for the readings. So
Noir at the bars are always fun because I think crime writers are a unique bunch. So it's always good to sort of pick their brains too, and sometimes get some creativity out of them, or like, oh, I'm going to use that.
yeah, like there's just so many experiences you have with your characters and with trying to plot a mystery and all of that, yeah, you don't know it until you've dug into it. So
I also noticed that you've recently changed publishers. I was actually enjoying the publishing site. I'm trying now to make an effort to buy directly from the publisher. So I did this from Dream Spinner. They seem to be obviously a unique edge, but prolific. They seem to be doing a lot. Could you say a few words about them?
yeah, I mean, I think that they probably started out as mostly sort of gay romance, and probably I would say erotica too. There's a lot of that there. And I think what's been really fun with them has been that, fundamentally they're readers, they love books. And I think they've been looking for something that would fit with their overall, this is what we do as a publishing company, which is to be very queer friendly and all of that. But that also could bring them a little more into, but really at heart, it's a detective novel. This isn't erotica, this isn't, there's romance in it, but it's not a romance story. This is really truly a detective novel. And I've got another book with them that's really, it's an alternate universe, kind of a science fiction fantasy, urban fantasy kind of a book. And it's very much that. And I think that they were looking, when I sort of collided with them by sending them The Girl Whose Luck Ran Out, this is an opportunity for us to kind of expand in a direction we've been wanting to go into, where it also kind of, even more than they've done already, mainstreams those gay relationships and other queer relationships and queer characters, which I think is great. I've never asked them this, but I truly believe that one of the things that kicked off this entire thing was a love of fan fiction. I think that when it started, I truly believe, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, but I feel like there was this, reading this stuff online that is engaging with our culture with so much energy and so much passion, and some of it's garbage, but some of it's actually great, and some of these writers are actually great. And how do you capture that and turn that into original fiction? And and I'm not in the sense of like just changing all the names and putting up fan fiction, but saying like, how do you capture that energy and that love and that passion and joy that fan fiction has? The idea that reading can and should be an enjoyable thing where you love the characters and you really care about them and you really want things for them and to spend time with them, and all of that while doing whatever other things you want to do with literature, which is talking about things like philosophy or ethics or what's a good person. All those things, they can all be together. There's no reason they have to be separate. And I think that that's kind of what drives them. And it means that I feel like we really understand each other, and I have a lot of fun with them. They're a blast to talk to.
Yeah, and you're also a blast to talk to. So it was very fun today. Yeah, it's very clear. Like, this is the first time we met, but it's very clear you're a student of noir and everything about the detective fiction, and probably sit down and talk for a couple of hours and learn a ton.
It's totally soaked in. I know. I could talk to you for hours, I'm sure. Like, this has been really fun. Great.
So to everyone out there, if you're in Edmonton, catch Noir at the Bar in April. You'll have to wait another 2 months or so for The Girl Who's the Man Who Lost His Pen. But you definitely have
and lost.
Very eerie, but like I said, it starts a good mystery. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Gayleen.
Thank you so much.